In our math notebook today, in the table of contents, you're going to write simplifying fractions. Sorry about that, my paper's turning over. Page 21 to 22. Simplifying fractions, 21 to 22. Then we're going to turn to page 21. You need to glue this down onto page 21. Find it in your notes and glue this down on page 21. Write page 21 on the bottom of page 21. And then we're going to talk about simplifying fractions. This is probably the hardest skill that is involved with fractions. There's a lot involved with fractions. We add, we subtract, we multiply, we divide. Simplifying is with all of those. And students typically forget the simplifying part. If you will recall from yesterday, the last step in adding and subtracting is simplify if possible. So a lot of times students don't know if it's possible or not, so they just skip it. So when you're simplifying a fraction, you want to see if you can make it smaller. The way we make numbers smaller is by dividing. So there's two ways that you can simplify a fraction. You can divide by common factors, or you can divide by the GCF, which is the greatest common factor. Now, this one here saves you work. This one here, you have to do more work. For example, they took 20 24ths and they divided it by 2. They got 10 12ths. But that is not in simplest form. It is simpler, but is not in simplest form. So then, after they divided it by 2, they took 10 12ths and they divided it by 2 again to get 5 6. So it took them 2 steps to get to the simplest form. Now, if you divide by the greatest common factor, you list all the factors of 20 and all the factors of 24. You see that the greatest number in both lists, this is opposite of LCM, the greatest number in both lists is a 4. So you divide 20 24ths by 4 and you get 5 6 in one step. It really, really helps when simplifying fractions if you know your divisibility rules. I don't know if any of you had Miss Stevens last year, but she is so good at teaching divisibility rules. I will teach you a couple right now, but that's not the point of this lesson. You should have had divisibility rules last year. So if numbers are even, they're divisible by 2, because like 10 and 12 are even, they're divisible by 2. If numbers end in a 5 or a 0, they're divisible by 5. Like this 10 is divisible by 5. This 20 is divisible by 5. Anything that ends in a 5 or a 0 is divisible by 5. To be divisible by 3, the sum of the digits has to be divisible by 3. So for example, if I add up these digits, 1, 0, I get a 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. Well, that's not divisible by 3. If I add 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 is divisible by 3, so 12 is divisible by 3. Those are divisibility rules. Each number has a divisibility rule. Some are easier than others. You'll probably know the divisibility rule for 2 and 10, and 2, 10, and 5. Those are pretty easy. But the other ones, you have to study to learn them. So we are going to look at some examples right here. We have 16 and 20. Now, they're both even, so I know they're divisible by 2, but is that the greatest common factor? I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to list my factors for 16 and my factors for 20. So when you list your factors, you list all the possible ways to multiply digits together to get that number. So for 16, I can multiply a 1 and a 16, and you list them in order. 1 is the smallest, 16 is the biggest. To get a 16, I can multiply 2 and 8. Can't multiply 3 by anything, but I can multiply 4 by 4. I don't list it twice. I just list it once. Can't multiply anything by 5, 6, 7, and I already have 8. So all the factors of 16 are 1, 2, 4, 8, and 20. 8 and 16. Now I'm going to list all the factors of 20. 1 and 20. 2 and 10. 3, no, 4, yes, and 5. 6, no, 7, no, 8, no, 9, no. That's all of them. So all the factors of 20 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. What is the greatest number in both lists? 4 is my greatest number. So I can divide the top and the bottom. So I can divide the top and the bottom by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So the simplest form of 16/20 is 4/5. All right, let's look at number 2, 8/16. Well, I already have the factors for 16 listed right here. I don't need to list those again. Let me list the factors of 8. So the factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it. 1, 2, 4, and 8. Let me use a different color here. What is the greatest common factor in 16 and 8 together? A lot of people would tell me it's 4 again, but it's not. It's actually 8. 8 is the largest one in both of those lists. So I'm going to divide 8/16. I'm going to divide it by 8 over 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 16 divided by 8 is 2. 8/16 simplifies to 1/2. 5/10, you should recognize that 5/10 are both divisible by 5 because they end in a 5 and a 0. So if I divide by 5 over 5, I get 1/2. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. All right, number 4, 8/32. Well, I already have my factors of 8. I don't have to list them again, but 32. Let me list some factors of 32. 32. So there's going to be 1 and 32, 2 and 16. Yes, 2 and 16. 3 doesn't work. 4 and 8. 5 doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. 7. That's all of them. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32. So I need the greatest one that's in 8 and 32. I'm going to get a different color. 8 and 32. 4 is in both, but so is 8. So my greatest common factor in both lists is 8. I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 32 divided by 8 is 4. All right, 18/42. Now, let me show you what would happen if we did not list our greatest common factors for 18 and 42. Let's do it this other way, the harder way, where we just divide by a common factor instead of the greatest common factor. So 18/42. I see that they're both divisible by 2 because they're both even. So I'm going to divide them both by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 42 divided by 2 is 21. Now, a lot of students might be going, oh, look, I'm done. That's it. I don't have to divide anymore. But that's not true. 9 and 21 are both divisible by 3. So I'd have to divide again by 3 over 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. So in simplest form, 18/42 is 3/7. Now, I could have saved myself extra work and just divided 18/42 by 6. I still would have gotten 3/7 in one step instead of in 2 steps. You can definitely do it in 2 steps. Most kids make more mistakes when they try to do it in 2 steps. 1500ths, you should recognize that they are both divisible by 5 because they end in a 5 and a 0. Divided by 5 over 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 100 divided by 5 is 20. 3/20ths in simplest form. 18/21, you can list your factors for 18 and your factors for 21. If you know your multiplication table super well, you should recognize that they are both divisible by 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 24/40ths, yes, they're both divisible by 2, but that's not the greatest number they're both divisible by. They're also both divisible by 4. And they're also both divisible by 8. So since the greatest number that they're both divisible by is 8, I'm going to divide them both by 8. Knowing your multiplication facts definitely helps with this. So get on reflex and study your multiplication facts. So 24 divided by 8 is 3, and 40 divided by 8 is 5. So 24/40ths in simplest form is 3/5. 55/70ths, you should recognize they end in a 5 and a 0, so they're both divisible by 5. 55 divided by 5 is 11, and 70 divided by 5 is... Now, if you will turn to page 22, because we have least common simplest form on both pages, you're going to put this on, glue this down on page 22, write 22 wherever you're keeping up with your page numbers. And I have 4 examples that I want you to do by yourself. And I want you to divide by the greatest common factor. Also, I want to call your attention to simplest form can also be called reducing. So you might see your directions say write your answer in simplest form, or you might see directions that say make sure to reduce your answer. That means the same thing. You want to get it as small as you can. You want to make sure that they have no other factors besides 1 in common. All right, so you have 4 examples. Make sure you write these examples underneath your notes that you glued down. 14/20ths, 40/48ths, 15/40ths, and 36/66. Pause the video and write these in simplest form. I want to see what you divided by. You have to show me what you're dividing by. After you work all 4 of these out, you may unpause the video and check your work. Hopefully you have worked all of these out. You can check your answers against mine. You should have divided 14/20ths by 2 over 2 to get 7/10. You should have divided 15/40ths by 5 over 5 to get 3/8. And I bet if you missed any of them, you missed these 2. Some of you might have divided this by 2, or some of you might have divided it by 4. But the greatest common factor is 8. So if you divide it by 8, you simplify it and you get 5/6. Some of y'all might have divided this by 2, or you even might have divided it by 3. But the greatest common factor is 6. And you get 6/11ths. Some students ask me in the past, like, how do you know it's in simplest form? Well, there's a couple of tricks. If you ever have consecutive numbers like this, like 5, 6, those go in order, you automatically know it's in simplest form. If you get prime numbers, again, prime numbers are a 4th grade skill, but prime numbers means they only have 1 and itself as a factor. For example, 7 is a prime number. The only way you can get 7 is by multiplying 1 times 7. So I know if the only way I can get 7 is 1 times 7, and I can't divide 10 by 7, then the only thing they have in common is a 1. So I know that's in simplest form. So those are some tricks. You look for prime numbers and you look for consecutive numbers. These are not prime numbers. These are not consecutive numbers, so I know that they are not in simplest form. you are going to do the back of yesterday's worksheet, which says reducing fractions. The front of it said least common denominator, and that was on Monday, yesterday. Today it says reducing fractions on the back, and it says Tuesday on it. You can watch the video to do the first, I don't remember, 10 or 12 with me, and then you'll pause the video to do the rest on your own.